This is Late Night Politics on STARFM, taking an in-depth look at the Zimbabwean political scene.
Good evening. It's a Monday and it's time for Late Night Politics. My name is George Msumba. Tonight we're discussing the Constitution and constitutionalism. This week has been eventful politically, what with the main opposition party, the MDCT, announcing that it would not be holding primary elections for those who want to contest for parliamentary seats. They will choose candidates through consensus, they say. ZANU-PF Secretary for Women's Affairs, was also the First Lady, Dr. Grace Mugabe, called on the party president to be involved in the naming of his successor and also called for the party to recognize and implement the gender component in the presidium and also in having 50-50 seats for women and men who will contest in the National Assembly. To help us in our discussion on constitutionalism, I have in the studio former COPAC co-chair and ZANU-PF Deputy Secretary for Legal Affairs, Comrade Munyaradzi Mangwana. Welcome to Late Night Politics.
Thank you. Good evening.
Also in the studio is lawyer and People's Democratic Party National Spokesperson, Comrade Jacob Mafume. Welcome to Late Night Politics.
Good evening. God bless you and God bless Zimbabwe.
Gentlemen, both of you were involved in the crafting of the Constitution. What were the lessons from the COPAC experience? I'll start with you, Comrade Mangwana.
COPAC helped reconstruct Zimbabwe's political landscape in that it is the first time the contesting political parties were able to sit down and come up with a document they agreed to and achieve drawing up a new constitution for the country. This is a homegrown constitution created by the people of Zimbabwe, recognizing their different political opinions and in their diversity were able to sit down and say, look, this is what belongs to our country. And they were all bound together as one family. And I think we during that process, Zimbabweans were able to talk to each other in peace and harmony and agree to disagree in some instances, but at the same time, agree to come up with a document they said was a fair document for everybody.
Do you think that from that moment, have we fed from that camaraderie that was there? Do you see it?
Yes, there's been a lot of reduction in political tensions in the country, and political parties have been able to talk and discuss. Even up to this point in time, the political parties are actually discussing how they can best hold free and fair elections in 2018. There has been some discussions under the auspices of ZEC and Zimbabwe Institute. We've been able to bring the political parties together. And I'm happy to say that we've continued to discuss even on how the BVRS system is going to be introduced in the country, how we are going to have the whole country register for the next election. The political parties are talking. That framework of discussing was created by COPAC, and it should continue.
Comrade Mafume, your experiences, what lessons do we draw from the COPAC experience?
Look, we learn that not every dispute is a matter of life and death. We learn that if you compromise, the sky won't fall, the ground won't disappear, the world won't change. Before previously, people thought that if maybe ZANU-PF compromised, the gains of liberation struggle have been reversed. If MDCT or the opposition compromised, the struggle has been solved, the democratic struggle. So what I'm saying is that people were governed by absolutes. And the fact that we were able to get some consensus going, I think this early part of the program probably is the part where positives are easier to talk about. I do believe that idea that tomorrow will always come, even if you agree, even if you compromise on certain principles, and that spirit of working together, being seen together, at least helped other people in the far-reaching parts of the country to realize that even opposition members are part and parcel of the national fabric and the necessary component, and that it doesn't necessarily mean that there is always one side to an issue which should be obeyed. And the product eventually did come. It has some benefits for the people. The issue of being brought to court for 48 hours, public interviews for certain public officials, term limits for senior public officials, and so forth and so forth. It has brought about certain structural and institutional changes that would have been difficult to deal with were it not for the new constitution. And that's important.
Comrade Mangwana, before I go to the next point, what were the proudest moments for you from the COPAC experience, the drafting and the coming up with the constitution?
I think the most testing time was when we were instructed by the members of the management committee to write a post-mortem about a failed process. It was one evening, the parties had decided to agree to disagree. And me and Douglas and Edward Mkosi were instructed by our seniors to remain behind in the negotiating room to write reasons why the constitution-making process had collapsed. And the three of us looked at each other. We looked at the 4 years we had spent on the project, and we asked ourselves, how we will look at Zimbabwe if we had to write a post-mortem. That night, we agreed to sit down and compromise without authority from our principals. 3 days later, we gave a document containing our proposed solutions to the matters which had caused the constitution-making process to collapse. And the day when we took our proposals before President Mugabe, Prime Minister Morgan Tsvangirai, and Minister Washman Ngwe, and presented our compromises, which were all accepted without modification, with the principals putting their signatures to what we had proposed as solutions, which then gave birth to the constitution-making process. That's the proudest moment I had in my life.
Mm-hmm. And as you look back, I know this is not part of our discussion. Are we going to see a book out of you with regards to this whole process?
I've been toying with this idea, and I am quite sure that time permitting, a book will be available. There is a lot which happened behind the scenes, which the nation does not know. I can literally tell you how each and every clause came about. The intrigues, the discussions, the disagreements, the compromises, and the torture we had to go through. Persuading your leadership. You first of all agree with your colleagues in the discussions. You then go to your leadership to sell the compromise. You are not sure whether they are going to agree or disagree with you. You take so much pain to ensure that when you go back, you are able to proudly say, look, I've taken this idea to the party, they've now agreed, and we can move to the next step. All these things will need to be documented somewhere. I'm so happy that at least there is a film which came out. But that film is only 40 minutes of 400 hours of what happened. So there's a lot which has not been documented, which may require documentation.
Comrade Mafume, you were also part of the process. You were playing an advisory role behind the scenes. Were you aware of what the COPAC coaches were going through, the deep discussions?
Yes. At that time, I was the principal director in the Prime Minister's office in charge of legal and constitutional affairs. So I was the interface on our part in terms of constitutional work, in terms of the Prime Minister's thing. It was a commendable effort, and it's very important, like you say, that if they can't write themselves, they probably need to get a ghostwriter, because most of the things are documented in video and so forth. So they have a lot of unedited footage, and one can easily employ a ghostwriter who will be able to write for history's sake. I mean, people need to start learning history. There's an element of trying to localize our history into textbooks for history students and so forth and so forth. And people and students at universities, which are many, at high schools, they cannot learn history that is not written. We can't have oral tradition of current history as if we are in time of Ngano and some such other oral tradition forms of history learning. It should be, there are too many technologies. It shouldn't be an excuse not to have these things written. If it was in South Africa, there will probably be 3 books about Mangwana, about Monzora, about Nkosi, and books about the process. There will be about you'll actually be having a whole shelf. If you go to South Africa, you have a whole shelf about their constitutional making process and the names of the people who did it. People in Zimbabwe seem to always live in the future. They always think that there will be something bigger next year, or there will be something bigger in 5 years' time. They were already big at that time. Yeah. And for some other countries, people retire on having been a chairperson of such a process. That is their life's work. They've retired, they're writing books, they're lecturing at universities and so forth, and they are respected for that. If it was the UK, you'll get a knighthood and so forth. The only problem is that our honours system simply honours dead people. It doesn't even honour alive people, so they will probably not be honored until they die. These people for bringing up a constitution.
The program is Late Night Politics, and we are discussing the Constitution and constitutionalism.
So it's
Comrade Mangwana, when you come up with the Constitution, it is attending that there should be within the citizenry constitutionalism. Have we embraced the concept of constitution? How do you understand it? Constitutionalism.
The concept of constitutionalism is embracing living within the confines of a constitution. It's one thing to have a document which says this shall happen that way. It's another for all institutions and the population itself to respect the spirit behind it and then embrace the document. So that is developmental. It doesn't happen overnight. A constitution is adopted, but living with it and within it, it can be a journey. Right now, sometimes I feel very sad when I see that people are not taking their rights seriously. The rights are given, but no one attends to them. No one wants to embrace them. If they are violated, nobody does anything about it. That is the missing link between having the constitution and constitutionalism itself. So we still are far off from living in a spirit of constitutionalism. We have a document which I think is quite good. Yes, it was compromised. It has its omissions, some of which we have already started observing. But the embracing constitutionalism is still quite a journey. But I'm very happy with one development which took place this week. And no one is paying attention to it in a serious way. When Parliament exercised its power and said to the Minister of Finance, you shall not appoint an Auditor General whom we think does not deserve to be there. Mm-hmm. And the Minister conceded, Parliament speaking in a non-partisan manner on a very important subject, the appointment of a critical player in the democratization of management of public affairs, the Office of the Auditor General. And Parliament says, first of all, give us reasons why the one who was there has left office, and publicly explains. Secondly, your candidate may have glowing credentials, but in our view, does not deserve to be there. And the minister says, I concede, I withdraw the name. This is a milestone in the management of our public affairs within the scope and spirit of the new constitution. It's a very interesting development.
Comrade Mafume, your understanding of constitutionalism, you has also raised the point that as far as rights are concerned, people don't seem to really grasp where your fundamental rights, which are very enshrined in the new constitution, but people don't know these issues. How do we tackle it? How do we make people conscious of constitutionalism and knowing their rights? And he has also expressed his admiration for how Parliament responded to a certain situation and stamped its foot and said, as our rights as representatives of the people is that we will not accept this candidate.
Yes, I think constitutionalism, I don't need to repeat what he said. I mean, it's a culture. It's a cultural aspect. We need to inculcate the culture of constitutionalism. Whilst he's talking about the great event that happened on the Auditor General, there was a very sad and tragic event that happened on the issues of electing judges. The first amendment of this constitution has happened before the ink has even dried on it, before any one of the founding fathers of the constitution has even died. it is already being changed to say that the president will appoint the heads of the judiciary, in particular the Chief Justice, the Judge President, and some other one. But of course, it hasn't been signed by the president, but it has passed both houses of parliament. And that is the contradictions between living within the constitution and trying to go back to a system where the constitution was not there. This was a constitution which was a product of the bipartisan approach, and that shows that there be public interviews. And we did the public interviews, and we got a Chief Justice, disagree or agree with him. The Chief Justice who came out, Justice Malaba, is a very good lawyer, a jurist. You can see where he's coming from, competent and everything. The dignity of the office is there. We as the opposition might disagree with some of his judgments, but we can follow the reasoning of some of those judgments, and that is how it should be. But now that is all gone and been blown to smithereens by the regime's desire to want to go back to the old ways. So we believe that is problematic, and that clearly overshadowed what happened with the Auditor General. As for rights, for people to know their rights, I think one mistake we made is that we didn't make the Constitution a compulsory subject in all levels of schooling. And one day when I was thinking about it, I thought we should have made it a compulsory subject, constitutionalisms at all levels, from primary, high school to university, and the copies and so forth, because people hide it. Sometimes people say when you want to hide things from the people, write them in a book. People will not read them. And we have successfully hidden these rights in the Constitution, and people are not reading them.
Do you have a response? He raised the First Amendment to the Constitution.
Yes, I do. We made a fundamental mistake when we were crafting the Constitution. In fact, we overlooked it. Our desire then was just to make sure that the selection of judicial officers is as transparent as possible. Unfortunately, we didn't look at the appointment of the Chief Justice. We equated the appointment of the Chief Justice to the appointment of other judges. The Chief Justice is the head of the judiciary, cannot be interviewed by his own juniors. There's a fundamental mistake we made there. And there's nothing wrong in an amendment correcting such an error. And that amendment is very restricted to the issue of the appointment of the heads of the judiciary. Internationally, no one has come up with an argument to say that the appointment of the Chief Justice should not be done by the head of state, because this is the practice all over. In the United States, it is the president who does so. Consults Senate and so on. In the United Kingdom, it is the Queen, in consultation with the Prime Minister, who does so. So this amendment is simply putting into practice what we call international best practices. International best practices, when it affects us, cannot be wrong simply because you're amending the Constitution. This was a document which was negotiated by the three parties, and errors were bound to happen. We could focus on certain principles and then avoid concentrating on certain things which are now so obvious. It became so obvious when we needed to replace the Chief Justice that there is an error in the manner in which we are now appointing a Chief Justice. So it was necessary to correct it. But the good thing is it will only take effect after the current Chief Justice has left office.
Yeah, well, I beg to differ. I mean, it's hardly international best practice. It's archaic practice. I mean, if you're talking about the Queen and the American Constitution, these things were written 200 years ago, and ours had been an improvement on that system. You look at the South African system. The head of the Chief Justice is actually also goes through interviews. We saw the interviews for the current Chief Justice, and that interview panel even had parliamentarians. It didn't just include lawyers, and they nominated the names that then Zuma appointed. Our system was going to become the international best practice
Does it also take into cognizance his point that a junior cannot interview someone?
That's a pedantic way of looking at judges, to call them juniors of each other. I'm actually surprised. I mean, these are judges. They are all judges, and someone might have come earlier or might be there. And becoming a chief justice is actually being raised among your peers. Some of the judges that never got to be chief justices were actually more able than other people who got to be chief justices. If you talk about Sandura, do you say he was a junior to Jijigausiku, any of the judges there? He never got to be a chief justice. There are certain levels in a profession where you must have a certain post filled. It's like lawyers electing a president for themselves of the law society. Very important person. But he can start then claiming that everyone is now my junior. I'll be very surprised if a chief justice walks around in the chambers and say, hey, my juniors. I mean, these are chief justices of the Supreme Court, the Constitutional Court. You are just electing a first among peers who has to be there simply because administration, protocol, and so forth dictate it. But when they do their judgments, they don't say that the chief justice arguments have precedence over the others because it's chief justice. All the 9 judges, if they are sitting as the Constitutional Court, they can disagree with each other and come up with a different opinion. If there are 3 in the Supreme Court, they can come up with a different opinion. There is no. It's not a high school. It's not like prefects choosing their headmaster. Yeah.
Any final words on that issue before we move on, Comrade Mangwana?
I maintain the position that the amendment was necessary for good governance. The Chief Justice occupies an administrative post and a judicial post. The key role he plays is to run as the chief administrator of the whole judicial system in the country. So he's a key administrator, and therefore the president has, as the chief executive of the country, the president is the group chief executive of the whole country. So he must be able to choose that person.
The program is Late Night Politics, and tonight we are discussing the Constitution and constitutionalism, and we are honored to have in the studio former COPAC co-chair and ZANU-PF Deputy Secretary for Legal Affairs, Comrade Munyaradzi Mangwana, and also lawyer and People's Democratic Party National Spokesperson, Comrade Jacob Mafume. Let's move on to the... We are going for elections next year, and looking at what are some of the opportunities offered by the Constitution for free and fair 2018 elections or any other elections in Zimbabwe. I'll start with you, Comrade Mangwana.
The most important thing which the Constitution provides for is putting standards of a free and fair election. That certain institutions must clearly play their own role with unfettered discretion. The coming in of the Independent Election Commission, the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, taking control of the entire electoral process from voter registration, from having a say in the demarcation of electoral boundaries, and conducting the entire election. That in itself provides room. We have an independent electoral body which must run elections. The previous elections, we had 2 bodies which were running elections. You had the Registrar General's Office, which is a government department, having a say in the compilation and maintenance of the voters' roll. Then you had the Electoral Commission, which was under the Ministry of Justice. This time around, the activities or the roles of the 2 bodies have been fused into one, and then there's a creation of an independent body which now takes care of all those activities on its own without interference from central government or any other interested player. And I think that is a very, very important development which is provided for in the new constitution.
Before I come to you, Comrade Mafume, in coming up with this section in the Constitution, how long did it take to draft this section? Was it the most contentious, or it was the easiest to sail through?
It was the easiest. We as political parties during the negotiating process, we agreed that we need to create a framework for free and fair elections which are not always contested, and taking the views of the people. Everybody, when we did our questionnaire, agreed that we must create a framework for free and fair elections. So there was not much contestation in that area.
Comrade Mafume, opportunities that are offered by the Constitution for free and fair elections.
Yes, the opportunities are there. I mean, and unfortunately, they are not being grabbed. The opportunity was they had created ZEC, an independent body, to speak. We had moved the running of the voters, the registration, the voters roll, from the RRG, which was the Registrar General, which was basically a government a department which had been tainted by the behavior of Tobai Wamudede in that post. But we have put it under ZEC as a voters roll. We've put functions under ZEC, which is an independent, which was supposed to be an independent body, to be able to run its own budget, create a secretariat, create even regulations that will be made into a statutory instrument that regulates the election. I mean, ZEC was given broad powers to do these things. The problem is that culture, that spirit, the default position of ZEC, because unfortunately we couldn't probably change as quickly as we could the officers that are in there, or because of the bipartisan nature of the selection of the officers, some of them who then resigned and so forth. We are having a situation where the implementation of the Constitution itself is becoming a problem. The voters' roll, we don't have now completely. No, everyone is not registered until we get the biometric voters' roll. There's no continuous registration of people. There's no copy, nothing except for the by-elections. The regulations are slow in coming. The drafts, I think if they haven't come in this month, they have not come at all. I mean, it's taken so many years to come up with draft regulations for the Constitution. We are still talking about the tender to the software to register voters few months away from the elections. And everything, the Secretariat never changed. It remained the same and so forth. So, and that is the challenge. That's why as the opposition, we have kept on saying that we need to reform. We need the harmonization of the Constitution. The harmonization of the Constitution is not only in the laws, but also the harmonization of the conduct of the office bearers. And we are worried about the fact that the regulations, once they come, they are referred to the minister. And he still has not abandoned the prerogative of amending those regulations and so forth. Yet ZEC must act like a referee in a game, whose impartiality must not only be done, but must also be seen to be done. It must be an impression. And I'm sorry to say at this stage, as the opposition, we have no confidence currently in the way things are happening. We are part of the consultative processes, yes, as we must. We are part of, but we are making our voices heard. And it has gone so bad to the extent that we boycotted the participation in the by-elections because they were not being done in terms of the new constitution and in terms of the new regulations. We were moving to register people from one constituency to another in a haphazard zigzag manner where we have a vacancy in a constituency, and that is when things are being done.
Some can argue that by boycotting, you actually slowed down the process of reform, because if you had participated in the various by-elections which came up, it would have been easier to point out there's duplication of voters here and so forth. By staying away, have you not slowed down the process of reform?
No, we think we have actually hastened, because consultations began after we boycotted. The other tenders that happened began after we boycotted. You know, when you are participating, sometimes people sense a feeling that you are a crybaby. You are crying because the result did not come your way. You are crying because you probably lost one or vote. And the tragedy can become when you win one of those faulty by-elections. And someone says, my friend, you are complaining, but you won the other one. What is it? We've looked at the bigger picture and we said it is beneficial for the country that we do the reforms once and for all. We don't participate in these piecemeal by-elections to Norway. We are able to do, and we think that the tendering for the BVR and other processes, the regulations that are coming and so forth, are as a result of the boycott, because the boycott became a reality that in the general election there might be a one-party horse race.
Comrade Mangwana, coming there, he has raised a number of issues that the opposition they want reforms. Your opinion, you are in ZANU-PF. Are you happy with the electoral laws? Are they adequate for free and fair elections?
I am happy, and I don't have a brief from ZEC. But to be honest, ZEC has been behaving in an impartial manner, in a very objective manner. We are privileged, probably as parties in parliament. We are engaging with ZEC at what they call high-level engagement meetings, where they are inviting the political parties represented in parliament. Unfortunately, my colleague, they are a new outfit and don't have anyone in parliament, and they are being put together with the other parties, fringe parties, because they chose to group themselves there.
But that is the unconstitutional behavior.
By rebelling from MDCT.
That is unconstitutional behavior.
Now, ZEC has created a framework through which the political parties represented in parliament are engaged. We've been shown how they want to roll out the BVR registration. It is correct that because of the new method of registering voters, the biometric voter registration system, every person, whether we have voted before or not, will have to re-register afresh. And that is why they are saying we don't have a voters' roll. It is correct we don't have a voters' roll. But if you had been privileged enough to be in the high-level panel discussions, you would have known that there is a program of ensuring that there is going to be a complete re-registration of people within 66 days. ZEC is going to produce 3,000 BVR kits, of which 2,600 will be rolled out. Each BVR kit will be able to register 16 registration centers during the period. 16 days at a registration center and 4 registration centers per BVR kit. And according to the calculations given by ZEC to us, and they said, come on, do your own if you want. The BVR kits being ordered are capable of registering 17 million voters. And yet we are not expecting more than 7 million voters in this country. So there will be adequate time and adequate facilities for registering everybody. I can understand the anxiety from a political party which has not won a seat and is eager to participate in elections they've chosen not to do practice matches on during by-elections, that they think that things will not be in order. But I can assure them from the inside information we are enjoying through the privilege offered to us by ZEC, everything will be in order.
Constitutional elections should not be privileged. You see, that's the constitutionalism we say is lacking. Now we are now talking about privileges. This is a sacrosanct right. How many years later, after the constitution was put in by none other than himself, are we talking about still trying to get a voters' roll? We cannot celebrate getting a voters' roll, which we should have gotten the moment the constitution was there. It was put in place in 2013. This is 2017. A few months from that other election, we still don't have the new voters' roll. We are holding by-elections using piecemeal voters' rolls that will not be used at the main elections. We are not even using the system that we will use in the main election in terms of registration. We will have biometric voter registration. So we cannot have a situation where the constitution is not being implemented or is implemented on the basis of privilege. And that is what we are saying, that it needs to be transparent. We need to have had the voters roll a long time ago, and the 66 days to register these people is being left on the eve of the election. The constitution says every person, when they turn 18, the moment they turn 18, they should be able to be registered. There should be continuous registration.
But Jacob is not being fair with ZEC. You should know that there's been an Electoral Amendment Act which now requires people to be registered at polling stations. You are now going to be having what is called a polling station-based voters roll. All along we had a ward-based voters roll. So your name could be found in 5 centers as long as they are within 1 ward. Now, your name is not only going to be found at 1 polling station. That's number 1. Number 2, we have introduced new technology, which is the BVR, the biometric voter registration system, which has necessitated a reintroduction or a complete re-registration. It is not about the constitution or about the availability of the voters roll. It is about the introduction of new methods of voting and new methods of registration, which have necessitated the bringing in or the re-registration of the entire population. But the key thing is, by the time we are going to have elections, that is by August next year, are we going to have a new voters roll? And the answer is yes. Is it going to be accurate? And the answer is yes. Our party is going to have an opportunity of inspecting and making comments and inputs to it, and the answer is yes. As long as those things are going to happen, then we have constitutionalism. We have adhered to the constitution. And there's no reason why anyone should complain. I'm only asking my colleagues in the opposition to be patient. Things don't happen at the pace you want them to happen or think they should happen. Processes have to be followed if we are going to have credible voters roll, credible voters registration system, and credible elections.
The trust issue, Comrade Mafume, are you approaching the whole issue already? Maybe one of the stumbling blocks which might mar the elections is that perhaps you don't trust the whole system.
Yes, we don't.
And yet, he has pointed out that one of the issues that will stop multiple voting in multiple places is the polling-based registration system, which is coming up. It's new, and the BVR system, which is something that the opposition has been crying for.
Yes, we want it. The thing is that it cannot be like the coming of Jesus Christ, and then we are supposed to celebrate the coming of something that is not here, because it will surely come. These are human processes. If they want to do command things, these guys, they command themselves and get lots of money. Every day they get command fertilizer, command this, command that. It is gotten. It doesn't take a long time to come like Jesus Christ. No one sings patience, patience, patience. But when it comes to key constitutional provisions of simply doing a BVR system for a population of 15 million people, very minute populations compared to where else it has been done, it comes at 5 times the cost, and it never comes. It is as if, why can't they do the command BVR? And it comes as quickly as they siphon a fertilizer and money, foreign currency, to plant seeds and such other paraphernalia.
There was that dispute which the opposition raised to say, why is now government funding it? And that will seem to put a scupper to the whole process.
No. It was not. You see, government, the funding, the bringing of the dollars is not a problem. Money is not partisan. What is partisan? Because if it's a US dollar, it's a US dollar. It's not even ours. But what is a problem was the changing of the procurement system. Because when we had a UN procurement system, but the coming in of government funds
to pay,
but
the system remained the same. It was still a UNDP process.
But after people protested, it's not the use. When you are using public funds, there is a catch, because you have to go through the state procurement system. So you cannot use unless you get the necessary waivers from the appropriate parliamentary bodies. You cannot simply take or you are not supposed, unless it's command, you are not supposed to take public funds outside the state procurement board system. Now, we have no faith with the state procurement board system because it was then taking us back to Nikov. The state procurement bond system has got its own rules and requirements which are different from the UN system. So what we wanted to do was to say, let's use the state fund, but let's agree to adhere to the companies that had been listed by the UN process.
Comrade Mangwana, the whole issue of trust emanates from the 2013 elections where ZANU-PF managed to win 60% as the president.
No, it doesn't come from 2013. No. We have to teach the opposition parties have to go back to school. They have to understand that in a contestation, there will be a winner and a loser. They've never accepted the outcome of any elections in this country.
If they accept,
we are the only party
you never accepted
which
2008.
decided to contest an election in 1980.
You never accepted 2008.
Where there was institutionalized favoritism, with Mzorewa having helicopters, campaigns, with the war not completely out, with fear and intimidation. But we went through that election and won. And we've accepted results. When we have lost an election, we've accepted results.
No, you have not.
We lost the referendum. We lost the referendum in 2000. We came out clearly and accepted that this is the wish of the people. They do not want this constitution, and we've accepted the
Morgan Changirai won
2008. We lost the first round.
No,
we accepted that we got 44%. We accepted that there was a delay in announcing something else.
They kept results hidden in a dark room for 3 months.
We accepted that.
Cooking them like
Morgan
a baked plate of macaroni.
47%, and President Mugabe got 44%. And we went for the runoff.
It
is the
cowards
who refused to contest the runoff. We have accepted the results where we have lost.
People were being butchered.
You do not
People were being killed
elections.
and butchered.
The opposition in this country, no matter
the
what you
ruling party
do,
does not accept results of election. They did not accept 2008.
Where they have not won.
No. Let's
So
set the record clear.
We are the
2008
only
Morgan
country
Changirai
where
won.
the opposition parties have not accepted,
No,
even where they've lost fairly, they don't accept.
No.
The next thing they are going to refuse the elections where they win.
No. Let's set the record clear. In 2008, the opposition, we won the election. Morgan Changirai won
the first round.
overwhelmingly. His president, in one of his slips of the tongue, said Changirai had won 73% in a Politburo meeting.
No.
And that was an accurate reflection of the
it's
result.
not. The result.
They failed to count results for 3 months. Can you imagine?
The votes
People
are there.
not counting results for 3 months.
No, the
In
votes are there.
2013, they counted results in 48 hours that they knew were cooked results. Right up to now, they have refused to open up the ballot boxes for election petitions for the results.
2013, you are also disputing.
Yes. We went to election petitions for the 2013 results. First of all, Tobayawa Mudede has steadfastly refused to give us the voters' roll, despite court orders, despite our requests, despite electoral petitions. We then had electoral petitions where we asked for the ballot boxes to be opened because an election is an auditable process. The courts and the Registrar General have refused to open the ballot boxes of the last year. They used voter slips. Voter slips were given galore. Children and foreigners were made to vote in constituencies. It was the most unfair
hence
election.
The movement to where we are now. Hence the movement
in the
to
history
where
of
we
elections.
Are. The transparency of the
Kagari.
BVR system. There will be no voter slips.
Yes.
All that has been taken into account.
Yes. The BVR system, if implemented correctly, the biometric voters registration system, which extends to biometric voting. But in this election, we are not going to have biometric voting. From what we understand, we'll have a biometric voters roll, but we will vote the same way we have been voting before. But the key thing about biometric voter registration, if people are taught very well, voter education is key. We don't want people being frightened that your details have been taken, therefore we will know how you vote. That is not the case of biometric. The advantage of Zimbabwe is that we've already got a biometric passport, we've already got a biometric national ID. So people must not be afraid of this biometric thing. Zimbabweans are geared to understand and assimilate a biometric voters registration, because we actually even have a biometric driver's license. So it's just an extension. What then becomes is that our voters roll becomes a biometric voters roll. If it develops very well, you could actually get a voter registration ID from which is an exact copy of your biometric voter details on the biometric voter registration. So people must not be afraid of biometric voter registration, and it will deal with some of those issues.
Are you already going to go out to do your own voter education?
Yes, definitely. We are going to educate the supporters, and I've also taken time to explain it right now so that people demystify biometric thing, to say your passport that you have right now is a biometric passport.
The transparency of the issue is that even within ZANU-PF, you might think that they will cook, but the president has also admitted that this is a new technology, and they will get a report from Comrade Mangwana and those who are participating with the high-level talks, and they will sit through it and they will study it and go out and it's also new to ZANU-PF. So isn't that a level playing field?
Certainly, it is a level playing field. Biometric simply means that your personal features, like your fingerprint, will identify you.
Your face.
So and your face, anything which is within your eyelids, not two features are the same. So if you look into the camera, they'll be able to identify that this is the correct person. So this claim that some dead people are suddenly voting will not be there. And as far as I'm concerned, the voting system in this country has always been very transparent. It's clear. We are only adding value through
it is
BVR.
as clear as a tub of scud.
Right? And you don't win an election simply on the basis of the electoral system. You win an election on the basis of what you sell to the public, your policies, your ideology.
In their case,
what you stand for,
their violence,
what you do to the people. No, we don't need any violence to win an election in this country. We only need what we stand for. If you are sponsored by our former colonizers, if you want to reverse the gains of our independence, if you want to reverse land reform, you will not win an election in this country.
I'm so happy it took him 40 minutes for him to talk about colonizers. I was wondering what had happened to ZANU. to finish a radio discussion without colonizers.
If you have empowered your people, if your policies are in line with the aspirations of the people, you have no problem.
Go back to colonizers.
You have no problem. But if your philosophy is about removing President Mugabe from power, you will not win an election.
Violent.
The program is Late Night Politics, and we are discussing the Constitution and Constitutionalism. And in the studio to help us with our discussion, I have COPAC co-chair and ZANU-PF Deputy Secretary for Legal Affairs, Comrade Munyaradzi, Paul Mangwana, and also lawyer and People's Democratic Party National Spokesperson, Comrade Mafume. You're reading, ZANU-PF holds primary elections to select the candidates who stand in the National Assembly as candidates. The MDCT has announced that they will leave it to those within a particular constituency to say reach consensus and come up with a candidate. You're reading into that. We are looking at the Constitution and constitutionalism. How do you read that concept of consensus?
We are comparing a democratic party, ZANU-PF, and other parties which are still learning the aspects of democracy. Any election is a contested area.
Hold on, Mama Fume.
Any election, whether it's an internal process,
they don't have primaries for
or
the
an
president.
external process, it's a contestation.
They don't have primaries for the president.
So you must have a democratic way of choosing the candidate. And our party, since 1980, when we started contesting elections, in fact, the only election where the leadership chose candidates was in 1980 because of the ceasefire system we had. Then thereafter, from 1985, there have been primary elections, and the most popular candidate wins. We have been holding primary elections, and I think the fairest way of selecting a candidate, even within the internal process of a political party, is primary elections. It is very difficult to get what you call consensus. It's not that easy to say, you 2 guys or 3 guys, you want 1 post. Can you go outside there, talk, and say who is the better of the 3 of you?
Well, look,
I've not seen it happen, and what I know is that the leadership will start saying, come on, you step aside, we want that one because we think that one will save us better, and then it becomes the subjective ideas of the leadership, and it's very undemocratic.
As the People's Democratic Party, how have you come up with candidates who will stand in the National Assembly?
First of all, it is a bit rich coming from a party that does not hold a primary for its president, that appoints its whole senior executive called the Politburo. It surrenders the appointment to the president, and right now it is a party which is debating. It can't even decide how it will get a successor. Some are saying the president must choose. Some are saying he himself is saying we have
you are in coalition talks, and probably you are also going to be faced with a situation where you select one candidate to be your presidential.
Well, consensus. We are going to come up with a consensus candidate.
Okay, and let's talk about the National Assembly seats. How have you come up with
what we haven't come up with our final list. We have asked, because we are a new party, and 2018 is our 1980. We are getting into a ceasefire arrangement from the harassment of ZANU-PF, like he said. So therefore, we ask the people we've got 2 or 3 candidates in certain constituencies. Obviously, we are going to try the consensus method, and if that fails, we are going to go to the primary election. But I want to remind our listeners that we now have a proportional system for MPs. Now, a primary election is for a first past the post electoral system, because you've got to have one candidate. But for a proportional system, the number 1, the number 2, the number 3, the number 4, the number 5, up to number 6 are candidates from that same political party. And then you hand over. So necessarily your number 1, and it's not suitable for primary elections. That is the proportional representation system. You have to have a party list. So we are going to have a hybrid system of selecting candidates. And that hybrid system is going to be one party list, and then first past the post, we are going to have to do the old school way, the primary election, because that's the Westminster system. In Westminster, they've developed it to include interviews for the prospective candidates, and they have a selection, or what they call a selectorate, a selection panel. So there are many ways of killing and skinning this cat that we should understand. We don't have to resort to the knob-carrying, knife-wielding, rushing method that ZANU-PF uses regularly to get its primary candidates.
I just want the listeners to appreciate something. The Politburo is the administration body of the party. These are secretaries who run departments. But in order for anyone to be appointed into the Politburo, that person must have been elected into the Central Committee. The Central Committee is the supreme body of our party, and it is elected. Every person who is in that Central Committee is elected. Once you are elected into the Central Committee, the people have now said to the president, these are the leaders. We want you to govern our party with at national level. Then the president will then pick his cabinet, which is now the Politburo. So it is not factually correct to say that members of the Politburo are not elected. They are elected into the Central Committee, just like members of Parliament are elected into Parliament. Once they are in Parliament, then the president will select his cabinet from that Parliament. So that's the same way the Politburo is actually appointed. But in terms of the PR system, our party is very clear. In order to come up with candidates who will be appointed into the proportional representation system, you use seniority. Once you have been elected in your district to be into the central committee and you are eligible for a post, the PR system, the most senior person within that district gets into the PR system. So our processes are very clear and democratic. And let me just put this point to its finish. The election of a president is by Congress. Every 5 years, ZANU-PF holds an election for the president. Since 1977, President Mugabe has been elected by his Congress to be the leader of the party.
Well, how about his successor?
His successor will be elected by Congress.
He's been already selected.
You are misunderstanding the words of the First Lady. You are misunderstanding them deliberately.
There is a selectorate.
She never said that the successor shall not be elected. She simply said the president of the party has an influence and a say. Even if you are going for an election, he has a say in the manner in which people are going to decide. If he says, I want to support Mangwana to be the next leader, the chances are that when people vote, they also want to know, but what does the president think? This is all she was saying. She was not saying there was not going to be a Congress. There is going to be a Congress, and that person is going to be elected by popular vote within the structures and the systems of our party. We are a well-groomed and experienced political party which can manage its affairs very well. And this is why we always have very good congresses taking place. We've been re-electing our president. When we don't want to elect him and want to elect another person, we'll have a congress which will elect the successor. It will not be a problem at all.
Before you respond, Mafume, you are in coalition talks, and we are talking about constitutions and constitutionalism. Have you gone back to the structures of your parties, all of you, the MDCT, Amaim Juris Party, your party, People's Democratic Party, to say this is how, have you got the mandate?
Yes, we've got the mandate to negotiate, which was the first thing. We went to our structures. All respective parties got their mandate to negotiate. The negotiations, as they are moving forward, we are reporting to the national executives that we have and the national councils. We know that the MDCT held its one, just yesterday, which was tried to be disrupted by the police and the regime. And then we held ours just before, and we got a mandate to negotiate. And as soon as we finish the negotiation, we will hold our council, endorse what or reject or amend what would have come out, and we will move on with the agreements as it were. So that process is very clear. We are in the opposition. We do things transparently. We don't force anyone. It's an open, voluntary church. But back to my comrade, if I can have the liberty of using such a term of endearment. It is very clear that the process of selecting a successor is chaotic. Right now, as we this evening, we know that over the weekend there was a rally where various officials of ZANU-PF and others were being made to face the crowds, being accused of trying to rule before their time, and so forth and so forth. There is no clear procedure, and who is going to succeed is all up into the air. And it is a time that as a nation we are urging peace in our colleagues' camp. We are urging that they did not destabilize the country in terms of trying to find who succeeds their party and whom they hope is going to then be the president of this country. It is a person whom we are going to soundly defeat. We are going to thrash in the elections. But we do hope that in their own little games, in their own party, they do find a democratic way of finding a successor which does not engulf the whole country in violence and instability and further lack of development.
Comrade Mangwana, is there chaos?
There's
in
no chaos.
ZANU-PF?
I want to assure him that in 2018 they will be facing a man called Robert Gabriel Mugabe in the election, and you defeat them resoundingly. Our party is clear. Every party has got its own internal dynamics, but ZANU-PF is one, and the ZANU-PF is solid. Let them be rest assured. They can see the crowds which are coming to interface with the president. It shows that ZANU-PF is too strong. Its structures are intact. There is no chaos within our party. We may have different views on different issues. That is the democratic way in which a party is structured. But we are one and we are solid.
As a follow-up to that, Comrade Mangwana, are you going to be running?
Yes, I'll be running in Chief Central. And I'm saying to colleagues in my party, I've come back and I'm come back strong, and I'll be representing my people in the next parliament.
Some said your duties as a COPAC co-chair took you away from your constituency. Have you been interfacing with your constituency? What programs have you?
Certainly, I've been initiating a lot of programs. I believe that Chivi, being a dry area, must have a lot of irrigation, and I've initiated a lot of irrigation schemes. We are taking advantage of the abundant water in dams like Muju and Bindamombe, and we've started a number of irrigation schemes to make sure that there's food security. We are also looking at the development of our education system. We don't have many minerals in Chivi district, and our best investment is in the education of our people, and therefore we've put up a number of schools and school programs. I'm running a scholarship trust for Chivi Central, where I'm taking about 10 children at each and every school to put under my scholarship. I'm putting about 10% of all my life savings into the education of my people. And I'm quite sure that I'll create an intellectually gifted constituency in Chief Central.
You will go through primary elections?
Certainly. I'll be going through primary elections, and I'm ready to stand against any candidate. I've actually held a farewell party for the sitting MP, whom I've told that your time is up. Please take up your bags and leave. I've come back.
Mafume, will you be running Harare South?
Oh, first of all, I want to wish Paul Mangwana the best of luck.
Thank you.
He is, he tries his best at all times. People might not understand him, but his heart sometimes is in the right place on many issues. It's just that he's in the wrong party. But we will wish him all the best. We need him in the future. I will, of course, be running. Because we are in coalition discussions, I will not disclose at the current moment where and which positions I will be running to. But I do believe that we have a role to play in terms of the transition that this country is having. We will need to carefully manage the country after the botched transition that is going to happen. We need to come up with new policies. The people are suffering, jobs, money. We are living in a country without a currency. We don't even have money. People get coins. When they go to the bank, they live with sacks of money, metal that is being accused of being money. And many people just have reflections on their cell phone screens and computer screens that they have 10,000. But if they go to the bank, they can only get it one coin at a time. So we think that the country is in a mess. We see it, we feel the mess. And it is up to people like me to be able to rescue the nation from what his party has brought. I mean, it's a biblical disaster, biblical famine, Pharaoh-like kind of ruling, which we should stop.
Good luck to the coalition. Like my president says, 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0 is equal to 0. So coalition does not necessarily translate to victory, especially where you are contesting against a formidable party like ZANU-PF.
Well, it's better than 1 minus 2. It can't.
Yes, as we close the program, one of the lessons that you talked about it, which came out of COPAC, was the idea that ideas can contest, but people can choose to come together, discuss in a peaceful manner. Words of peace, Comrade Mangwana?
I want to request the people of Zimbabwe that, notwithstanding the differences we may have in terms of ideology, we must always live in peace and have peaceful discussions and peaceful elections. There is no need for violence. We do not need to kill each other. We fought once to liberate our country, and we should never fight again.
Comrade Mafume, words of peace?
I think we as a nation, we need our church leaders to pray for us. This is going to be a difficult time. It is a trying time. We are all going through a transitions. Everyone can see it. This country needs all its prayers. We need all our ancestral spirits to be with us. Our history has been littered with extreme violence at every transition. We do hope that this transition will be different from the other transitions that we have had as a nation. I will be together with many people tomorrow at church, praying very hard for the Lord to see us in this trying time. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, for coming through to Late Night Politics. It has been an engaging discussion, and we have been talking about the Constitution and constitutionalism. Very interesting. We have challenged Comrade Mangwana to come up with a book around the crafting of our national constitution, which we adopted in 2013. There's a book there, a whole lot of history and a whole lot of theses could be written around that subject. And we thank Comrade Paul Mangwana, Munyaradzi Paul Mangwana, for coming through to Late Night Politics to just give us a glimpse. It's not enough, but just a glimpse of what we went through in coming up with our constitution. We discussed, are we following the issue? Are we following the issue of constitutionalism? And we wanted to thank COPAC co-chair, former COPAC co-chair and ZANU-PF Deputy Secretary for Legal Affairs, Comrade Munyaradzi Paul Mangwana, for coming through. And we also had in the studio a lawyer and People's Democratic Party National Spokesperson, Comrade Jacob Mafume, with his also views around constitution and constitutionalism. It's always a pleasure to have you coming through to Star FM. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming through.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. God bless you. God bless Zimbabwe.
My name is George Msumba. Catch us again on another riveting program of Late Night Politics, and our panelists are shaking hands, and I hope you at home also shake hands, whether you belong to the ruling party or to the opposition. It's your chance to talk to each other, differ on aspects of your beliefs, but at the end of the day, we are all Zimbabweans. Good night. Catch you again next week.
You've been listening to Late Night Politics on Star FM, taking an in-depth look at the Zimbabwean political scene. Join us again next week, Monday, same time on Star FM. Tune in to Star FM every Monday night for Late Night Politics, brought to you by Star FM News and Current Affairs. From 11 p.m. till midnight for riveting, engaging political discussions. Meet Zimbabwe's political players as they square off live on Zimbabwe's leading radio station. Your Monday late nights will never be the same again. Late Night Politics on Star FM, leading the pack and sounding good all the time. You've been listening to Late Night Politics on Star FM, taking an in-depth look at the Zimbabwean political scene. Join us again next week, Monday, same time on Star FM.